For a long time, I thought it was something to be proud of. I didn't ask for much. I didn't make things complicated. I adapted. I adjusted. I made it easy. If plans changed last minute, no problem. If they needed space, I gave it without being asked. If they forgot something that mattered to me, I told them it was fine. And mostly, I meant it. I'd convinced myself that not needing much was a kind of strength. That I was the easy one, the uncomplicated one, the one who didn't require anything extra. It took me a long time to see what I was actually doing. Here is what it looked like, specifically. I would notice something hurt and immediately talk myself out of it. It's not a big deal. They didn't mean it that way. I'm being too sensitive. I became very skilled at editing myself in real time. The version of me that existed around other people, especially people I cared about, was a trimmed down version. Quieter needs, softer wants, preferences I'd figured out how to go without. I would ask myself before speaking, is this worth bringing up? Will this feel like too much? And most of the time, I decided it wasn't worth it. So I kept it to myself. And I told myself that was maturity. I told myself that not every feeling needed to be said out loud. That some things were just mine to carry. And there was something almost peaceful about that. The quiet of not needing, the ease of never being a burden. I didn't realize yet that I was disappearing into it. I think I learned it early. I don't mean early in any dramatic way. There wasn't one defining moment I could point to and say, there. That's where it started. It was quieter than that. It was the small moments of noticing that some of my needs made people uncomfortable. That asking for certain things created a tension I didn't know how to hold. A look that said, really? A sigh that said, again? A silence that said, I thought we were past this. I learned to read those silences very quickly. And I learned that if I just adjusted, softened, reduced, the tension went away. So I stopped asking, not all at once, gradually, one small adjustment at a time, until the adjustments became automatic. Until not needing became the shape I naturally took in any room with another person. I didn't notice it happening. That's the thing about learning to disappear. You get so good at it that you stop seeing it as disappearing. You start calling it independence. You start calling it strength. You start calling it just how I am. What I didn't understand then was how much it cost, not in any single moment, in accumulation, the exhaustion of always editing, of running every sentence through a filter before it left my mouth, the loneliness of being in a room with someone and still not being fully there, because the version of me they were with, the agreeable, uncomplicated, low-maintenance version, that person didn't actually exist. She was a performance I'd gotten so good at that I'd forgotten it was a performance. And underneath her, quieter, more tired, more honest, was someone who actually had preferences, who wanted things, who needed things. Someone who had her own opinions about where to eat and her own way of wanting to be held and her own grief that kept showing up at inconvenient times. Someone who had spent so long making herself small that she'd lost track of her actual size. And the strangest part was that I was so tired, not from doing too much, from holding back so much. There is a particular exhaustion in constantly monitoring yourself, in being the one who always adjusts, the one who always gives, the one who never quite arrives. The thing that made me finally see it wasn't a dramatic conversation. It was something smaller. I noticed that they never did it. Made themselves smaller, adjusted their preferences, talked themselves out of what they wanted. They asked for things freely, changed their mind without apologizing, took up space like it belonged to them, because it did. They would say, "I don't want to go there." I would say, "Sure, wherever you want." They would say, "I changed my mind." I would say, "That's fine, of course." And I realized I had been working very hard at something they had never once considered doing. I had been making myself manageable for someone who never thought to manage themselves for me. Not because they were cruel, not because they didn't care, but because it had never occurred to them that there was anything to manage. They just existed, fully, easily, without apology. And I had been editing myself into a smaller shape to fit around that. And the thing that stayed with me, the thing I couldn't stop thinking about, was that nobody had asked me to. And here is the confusing part, because low maintenance was always a compliment. People said it like it was something to aspire to, easy to be around, not dramatic, not demanding, and I had worn it like a badge. So when I started to feel not proud but hollow, I didn't know what to do with that. Because by every measure, I was doing everything right. I wasn't creating problems. I wasn't asking for too much. I wasn't being difficult. So why did it feel like I had lost something? Why did I look at people who asked for what they wanted? People I had quietly judged as high maintenance, and feel something that wasn't judgment anymore. Feel something closer to envy. And then, underneath the envy, something even harder to name. Grief, maybe, for all the times I had something to say and didn't. For all the needs I had quietly folded up and put away. For the years I spent being easy when what I actually needed was to be known. And here is the confusing part, because low maintenance was always a compliment. People said it like it was something to aspire to, easy to be around, not dramatic, not demanding, and I had worn it like a badge. So when I started to feel not proud but hollow, I didn't know what to do with that. Because by every measure, I was doing everything right. I wasn't creating problems. I wasn't asking for too much. I wasn't being difficult. So why did it feel like I had lost something? Why did I look at people who asked for what they wanted? People I had quietly judged as high maintenance, and feel something that wasn't judgment anymore. Feel something closer to envy. And then, underneath the envy, something even harder to name. Grief, maybe, for all the times I had something to say and didn't. For all the needs I had quietly folded up and put away. For the years I spent being easy when what I actually needed was to be known. I started asking myself a question I had never asked before. What would it mean to let someone actually choose me? Not the version of me who didn't need anything, not the version who was always fine, but the one who sometimes wasn't fine, the one who had a preference, the one who wanted something specific and felt nervous asking for it. What would it mean to put that person in the room and see what happened? It was terrifying to even imagine, because a story I had been telling myself, the one that said, "This is safer," had been protecting me for so long that I didn't know who I was without it. And I realized that the thing I was most afraid of, being too much, was something I had never actually tested. I had been so careful not to be too much that I had never let anyone tell me I was enough. I don't think there's a simple way to undo this. Learning to take up space after years of practicing the opposite, it is slow, it is uncomfortable, it sometimes feels like the most selfish thing in the world, but I have started asking for things. Small things at first, things that feel almost too small to count. And I have started noticing when I am about to talk myself out of something and pausing there just for a moment, letting the need exist before I decide what to do with it. That pause is the work. Not every need gets spoken, but now I at least know it's there. If you recognize this, if you have spent years being careful not to need too much, I want you to know that it makes sense that you got here. You were trying to protect something. The question is just, what are you ready to stop protecting yourself from? There is a reflection on gentle rivers that sits with the other side of this. What it feels like to have lost yourself inside someone else, and what it takes to find your way back. The link is below.